It's time to paint one of my favorite things, fur. Now, dry brushing and washes do a great job for tabletop, but if you're looking for a step above that, I'm going to show you how I paint a little bit more realistic fur. Now, a friend once described the way I paint fur as death by a thousand cuts, which made me laugh, but they're not wrong. But I'm going to break it down and make it easy for you in this video. When painting something to look white, you usually don't want to start with white. There are always exceptions to the rule, but generally, you want to save white for your brightest highlight. A good neutral way to begin is to work up from grays to your white, but I find adding color gives a bit more dimension. So I'm going to be painting this 3D printed wolf that I got from Fireforged Minis in a warm tone like this good boy over here. To begin, I'm going to be using a Blackened Brown from Reaper Miniatures for a base coat. You can choose any dark brown that is slightly warm to neutral. This color kind of reminds me of chocolate. I'm going to brush on one layer, trying to avoid the deepest recesses of the model. Next, I'm using Vallejo Model Color Buff. I'm going to mix this with the brown to create two transition colors. The color mixing doesn't need to be any exact measurement, I'm just making some in-between colors for a smoother transition when building up to the highlights. A good habit to get into is always use a palette knife or what I like to call the butt of your brush to mix paint. It saves your bristles. I'm going to grab some of the darker mixture first. Working in single line strokes, I'm going to cover all of the raised areas with one layer. A tip when painting fur is to keep your brush strokes in line with the direction of how the fur grows, brushing from the root of the hair outward. I've decided to just work on a smaller section of this model in order to show the process a bit quicker, so let's focus on this side of his face and leg for now. Grabbing some of the lighter mixture, I'm going to start working on finer brush strokes. To help show how much paint and pressure I'm using, I've painted my thumb a little bit here. I'm taking the tip and dragging it in single quick motions, sometimes overlapping. I'm layering this on a bit more spaced out than the last one, closer together in areas that I'll end up building the highlights in. In those brightest highlighted areas, I'm going to do a second pass. Now I'm comfortable using larger brushes throughout most of this process, but you can switch to a smaller one if that works better for you. Now it's time to start shifting the fur white, using the same line motions but with the solid buff color. I want the areas around the eyes to be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to do another pass again around here. Friendly reminder, don't make it harder on yourself. It's easier to turn the model to adjust for painting than it is your brush. Once I'm happy with how that looks, I'm gonna grab olive flesh. Now this is probably one of my favorite paints because I absolutely love using it for highlighting. It's very similar to a creamy ivory. If you've not seen my apples bust before, the white goat head was painted with a blend of purple and blue shadows, brown midtones, and olive flesh as the highlight. There's no white paint on this model at all. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to help create those finer lines. Showing on my thumb again, I'm going to make quick strokes but spread them out a little bit further. Going over all the highlights and tips of the fur. Around the mouth, it's flat and there isn't any fur actually sculpted on the model. So to create the tiny hair effect, I'm simply tapping the tip of my brush, like stippling, but at an angle and slightly pulling a line instead of a dot. I'm going to do a second coat in some areas around the face. To clean up some of the transitions, I'm going to go back and grab a little bit of that lighter brown and buff mixture. With this, I'm only overlapping the shadow and where it meets the midtone. This is going to soften the fur a bit. I'll go back with that olive flesh to quickly pluck out some more hair details that might have gotten lost. And for the last step, it's time to finally use white. I'm only grabbing a small amount of paint and tickling those brightest highlight points. I decided for good measure to clean up the front of his mouth and then quickly paint his eye, nose, and teeth. And that is one way I like to paint white fur. I will end up painting the rest of the wolf later. Maybe I'll paint the other side of him in shadow or do an OSL effect. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you have any suggestions on future ones, let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and please hit that like and subscribe button. I promise I'm still giving my dog pets every time you do.